Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're diving into the moment Tu Tieu stops begging for answers and starts hunting for them. Because if her own mother is hiding behind a door, then someone is holding the key. And Linh, she's about to slip in the one place she thought Tu Tieu would never dare to return. That night, the farm was quiet again. The children had gone home with their painted bamboo dragonflies, and the chalk grid of Oan Quan was still faintly visible on the ground, like a small reminder that joy could exist even when life was heavy. Uri washed the last bowls while Tu Tieu sat on the wooden steps staring into the dark. He didn't ask too much. He could tell her heart was still back at that silent house, stuck between a half-closed door and a dead phone line. Uri finally dried his hands and sat beside her. "Did you find your mum?" Tu Tieu's mouth tightened. No. She didn't say Lin's name at first, but the anger lived behind her calm like a storm waiting for permission. Uri spoke carefully. Maybe she really went somewhere. Tu Tieu laughed once, short, bitter. Uri, there were signs someone was inside. The cup was washed, the scarf was folded, the floor was clean, and Linh said there were cameras, but there weren't. Uri's jaw clenched. He didn't like accusing without proof, but he disliked lies even more. Tu Tieu leaned back against the post, eyes lifting to the sky where clouds hid the moon. "My mum is hiding from me." Uri's voice dropped. "Why would she do that?" "That's what I'm going to find out," she said. And this time, it wasn't just sadness speaking, it was something sharper. Uri glanced at her. "What are you planning?" Tu Tieu looked down at her hands. "Tomorrow morning I'm going back." Uri's eyebrows rose. "To the house?" She nodded. "But not like before. I won't call. I won't knock. I'll just confirm the truth." Uri wanted to tell her to be careful, but he also understood something. Tu Tieu's pain wasn't only heartbreak. It was the humiliation of being pushed away by a lie so careless it felt like an insult. So instead of stopping her, Uri said, "Then I'll go with you." "No," Tu Tieu replied immediately. "If Linh sees you, she'll twist it into something else. She'll start another rumour, another poison. I need to do this cleanly." Uri didn't look happy, but he didn't argue. He only said, "Then call me the second you feel unsafe." Tu Tieu nodded. "I will." But inside she already knew something. If she waited for safety, she would wait forever. Because secrets don't dissolve politely. They fight back. The next morning, Tu Tieu left while the farm was still wrapped in pale mist. The road to her mother's neighbourhood looked the same, but her heart felt different. Yesterday she came like a daughter. Today she came like someone collecting evidence. She stopped at the corner store first, bought a small bag of oranges, something normal, something that looked like a visit. She didn't want neighbours wondering why she was sneaking around. Then she walked toward the house. Her steps slowed as the gate appeared. She didn't call out. She didn't say, "Mum." She simply stood there, listening. The world was awake now. Distant motorbikes, a rooster somewhere, a woman sweeping in the next yard. And yet, her mother's house still felt sealed. Tu Tieu's eyes moved to the windows. The curtains were half drawn, but not perfectly, like someone had adjusted them recently. Her throat tightened. She stepped closer, pretending to rearrange the oranges in her bag while her eyes searched for movement. A shadow passed behind the curtain, quick, cautious. Tu Tieu froze. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't hope playing tricks. Someone was inside. Her pulse thundered. She forced herself to breathe, to think. If her mother truly didn't want to see her, then pushing harder would only make her retreat deeper. And if Linh had convinced her mother to hide, then any loud confrontation would give Linh exactly what she wanted. Chaos. So Tu Tieu did something unexpected. She walked away from the front door and moved along the side of the house, toward the small back area where her mother sometimes dried herbs. The old wooden fence was still there. A loose board near the corner had always been slightly unstable. Tu Tieu remembered, because she used to squeeze through it as a child. She tested it gently, still loose. Her heart pounded harder, Not because she felt guilty, but because she felt like she was stepping over a line she couldn't unstep. She slipped through carefully, silent as breath. The back area smelled like dried leaves and herbal oil, familiar and painful at the same time. Then she noticed it. A plastic bag in the corner, new, clean, not dusty, sitting on top of an old stool. Inside the bag were groceries, fresh ones, the kind someone buys that morning. Tu Tieu's skin went cold. If her mother had gone to the countryside, who bought those groceries? She took a step closer and saw a receipt peeking out from the bag, thin white paper folded twice. Her hand hovered. For a moment she hesitated, like she was still a daughter asking permission. Then she remembered Lin's voice. Stop pushing. No. She was done being pushed. Tu Tieu pulled the receipt out carefully. The receipt wasn't from the corner store, it was from a pharmacy. And scribbled on the back in familiar handwriting that made her stomach twist were 2 words. Keep quiet. Tu Tieu's breath caught. It was her mother's handwriting. She knew it like she knew her own name. Keep quiet. To whom? To herself? To Tu Tieu? Or to someone who had threatened her? Tu Tieu felt rage rise, hot and protective. Someone had reduced her mother to whispers behind doors. She slipped the receipt into her pocket and moved toward the kitchen window. The window was slightly open, just enough for the smell of a warm rice to drift out. Warm, fresh. Someone was cooking. Tu Tieu whispered, almost without meaning to. Mom. But she stopped herself before the word became a call. Instead, she listened. A faint sound, like a cup being placed down too quickly, then silence. Fear. Tu Tieu swallowed hard. Her eyes stung, but she forced her tears back. She moved again, this time toward the hallway window that faced the inner corridor. The glass was old and slightly cloudy, but she could see shapes. A door half closed, and behind it, a figure, still, as if holding her breath. Tu Tieu's whole body tightened. It was her mother. She didn't need a clear view. She recognized the curve of her shoulders, the posture of someone trying to disappear. Tu Tieu's hands trembled. Her first instinct was to rush in, to throw the door open, to say, "Why? Why are you doing this?" But then she saw something else. A phone in her mother's hand, and her mother's thumb hovering over the screen, like she was debating whether to call someone again. Lin. That name flashed in Tu Tieu's mind like a warning sign. Tu Tieu backed away quietly. If she forced contact now, her mother might panic and call Lin immediately, and Lin would arrive like a shield, blocking everything. Tu Tieu needed something Lin couldn't talk her way out of. She needed a piece of truth she could carry. So she moved toward the living room door. It was locked, but the old lock had a weakness. If you lifted slightly and turned gently, it sometimes clicked. Tu Tieu tried, slow and careful. Click. The lock gave. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She stepped inside. The living room smelled exactly like she remembered. Dust, wood, and the faint lingering scent of balm. And on the table, there it was, a brown envelope, not old, not random, new, sealed, but pressed down by a small object like someone had been about to open it. A red circular stamp mark bled through the paper. Not readable, no words, but unmistakably official. Tu Tieu's fingers went cold again. Legal papers. She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. The asset transfer secret. She knew it had been signed before, but this looked like something ongoing, something still moving. Something her mother was being forced to handle while hiding behind a door. Tu Tieu lifted the envelope. It was heavier than it should have been. Inside were multiple sheets. She didn't rip it open fully. She only slid the papers out enough to see the top page, and the top page made her vision blur for a second. A copy of a power of attorney-related document marked with a date. Recent. Too recent. Her breath came shallow. At the bottom corner, she saw a name typed under a line labelled Witness, a name she didn't recognise. But above that was another detail that made her blood run colder. A location, a notary office address, and a time. As if there was another appointment, another signature, another step. Tu Tieu's hands shook so hard she had to press the paper against the table to steady it. So that's why her mother was hiding. Not because she didn't love her, because she was trapped inside something that was still happening. Tu Tieu slid the papers back into the envelope exactly as she found them. Then she did one more thing. She took out her phone and she snapped a picture of the envelope, angle low, just enough to capture the red stamp bleed in the corner of the document showing the notary address. Proof. Then she returned everything to the table, locked the door again, and slipped back outside through the same loose fence board. Only when she was far enough from the house did she allow herself to breathe. Her mind raced. If Lin had lied about cameras, she might lie about everything else. But a notary address, a witness name, those were concrete. Tu Tieu's grief shifted into clarity. She walked quickly to the end of the street and stopped. Then she made a call. Not to her mother, not yet. She called Lin. The line rang once, twice. Then Lin answered with that same clean, cold tone. "What now?" Tu Tieu forced her voice to stay calm, almost casual. "I went back." There was a pause, a tiny one, but Tu Tieu heard it. Lin didn't like surprises. Tu Tieu continued softly. "You said there were cameras. Funny thing is, I think I found something better than cameras." And for the first time, Lin's voice sharpened. "What are you talking about?" Tu Tieu looked down at the oranges in her bag and smiled without warmth. "I'm talking about paperwork," she said. "Official looking, with a stamp." Silence on the line. Not long, but long enough. And that silence told Tu Tieu something very important. Lin knew exactly what she meant. Tu Tieu's voice stayed gentle, almost playful. "So, should we talk? Or do you want me to take this to someone who understands legal documents?" Lin finally spoke, and this time her calm was forced. "Don't do anything stupid. Where are you?" Tu Tieu turned her head, eyes scanning the street like she could already see the danger approaching. "I'm close," she said. And then she ended the call, because she didn't need to hear Lin's next lie. She only needed Lin to make her next move, and Lin always moved when she felt control slipping. Tu Tieu tightened her grip on her phone, heart steadying into something hard and determined. She whispered to herself, "Now, I'll see what you're really hiding." And as she started walking away, far behind her, the curtains in her mother's house shifted again, like someone watching from the dark, like someone terrified that the truth had finally been touched. Tu Tieu didn't go back to the farm right away. 2 streets away, beside a Tet stall, she called Yuri. "Yuri, my mum is inside that house." Lin lied, she said, keeping her voice steady. Yuri's breath caught. "How do you know?" "I saw her behind the door, and I found an envelope on the table. Legal papers. There's a notary address and a witness name. It's recent." A short silence. Then Yuri said, "Come home. We'll think." "No," Tu Tieu replied. "If I go home first, Lin will move faster. I'm going to that notary office. I need facts." "Then call me every step," Yuri insisted. "I will," she promised, and ended the call. At the notary office, everything looked ordinary. Bright signboard, plastic chairs, Tet decorations. That normality made her skin crawl. She approached the receptionist. "Hi, I need to confirm an appointment under Mrs. Lan's name." The receptionist asked for details. Tu Tieu gave her mother's full name and birth year, hands clasped so they wouldn't shake. After a few clicks, the receptionist's expression changed. "There is an appointment, this afternoon." Tu Tieu's throat went dry. "Who booked it?" "I can't disclose," the receptionist began. Tu Tieu nodded. "I understand. Just, is the witness name the same as this?" She flashed only the corner of her phone photo, just the witness line. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "Yes, same." So it wasn't a leftover document. It was a plan for today. Tu Tieu stepped outside into harsh sunlight and called Lin. Lin answered immediately. "Where are you?" Tu Tieu smiled without warmth. "You sound worried." "Stop playing games," Lin snapped. "What do you want?" "I want to understand your story," Tu Tieu said lightly. "Yesterday you said my mum went to the countryside. You also said there were cameras. Remind me, where did you install them?" A beat. Too long. "What cameras?" Lin shot back, trying to dodge. Tu Tieu's voice stayed soft. "Exactly. There are none." Lin's tone turned hard. "Your mother is tired. She doesn't want to see you. Stop forcing it." Tu Tieu let the sweetness fall away. "She has a notary appointment this afternoon." A tiny inhale leaked through the line, small but real. Lin recovered fast. "So? She's handling her affairs." "Then why did you tell me she left?" Tu Tieu asked. "And why did a woman claiming to be family book it for her?" "You don't know what you're talking about," Lin hissed. "I know enough," Tu Tieu said. "Meet me at the farm. If you're innocent, you'll have nothing to fear." She ended the call. Back at the farm, Yuri was already waiting, face tight with worry. Tu Tieu showed him the photo. The envelope corner, the stamp bleed, the address line. Yuri's jaw clenched. "They're still pushing your mum to sign." Before Tu Tieu could answer, a car rolled up outside the gate. Lin stepped out, polished and controlled, smiling like she owned the air. "Why are you both looking at me like that?" Yuri didn't greet her. "Why did you lie about cameras?" Lin's smile flickered. "I didn't lie. I just..." Tu Tieu lifted her phone. "Show me one camera. Anywhere." Lin's eyes darted, searching for a place to land. "This is childish." "No," Tu Tieu said, voice quiet and sharp. "What's childish is lying so I'd leave, while my mother hides behind a door." Lin's face cooled. "Your mother made her choices." Tu Tieu took one step closer. Did she choose to write "keep quiet" on a pharmacy receipt? That word, receipt, hit like a slap. Lin's mask cracked for a second. "You went through her things?" Yuri's voice dropped. "So you admit she was home?" Lin's nostrils flared. She leaned in, voice low, poisonous. "If you keep digging, you'll destroy her." Tu Tieu didn't blink. If the truth can destroy her, then the lie is already killing her. For a moment, Lin looked ready to explode. Instead, she forced a thin smile. "Fine, go to the notary. Stop the signing. But when your mother collapses from stress, don't blame me." She turned and walked back to her car. As the engine started, Tu Tieu's phone vibrated. An unknown number. One line. "Don't go to the notary. If you go, your mother will pay." Tu Tieu's blood went cold. Yuri read it over her shoulder and whispered, "Who is this?" Tu Tieu stared down the road where Lin's car was disappearing. Her voice came out steady, dangerous. "Someone who thinks fear will stop me." And she tightened her grip on the phone, because now it wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was a threat. Tu Tieu secretly returns again to her mother's house and realizes Mrs. Lawn is inside, hiding behind a half-closed door. She finds fresh groceries, a pharmacy receipt with her mother's handwriting, "Keep quiet," and a stamped envelope holding recent power of attorney documents, listing a notary address and witness. She photographs the evidence, then calls Lin and hears a rare nervous pause. Determined, Tu Tieu checks the notary office and confirms Mrs. Lan has an appointment that afternoon. She confronts Lin by phone, exposing the camera lie and forcing Lin into evasive threats. Lin arrives at the farm to regain control, but Tu Tieu and Yuri press her until she slips and admits Mrs. Lawn was home. Lin warns that digging will destroy their mother, then drives off. Moments later, an unknown number texts, "Don't go to the notary, or your mother will pay."